They said elephants never forget, but what Kalu did on his final walk proved they also never stopped teaching us. His story is one of loss, survival, forgiveness, and the lesson of memory. Stay with me because you will never look at elephants the same way again. In the dusty plains of Africa, a baby elephant was born into a herd that thrived under the watchful eye of his mother. That baby was Kalu. From his first stumbling steps, he was wrapped in the protection of his family. Elephants do not raise their young alone. Mothers, sisters, aunts, and even cousins surround the calf, teaching, guiding, and protecting. It is said that an elephant calf is every elephant's child. For Kalu, that protection would matter more than anyone could imagine. Kalu's earliest memories were simple: the scent of grass after the rain, the feel of his mother's trunk nudging him forward, the echo of trumpets when the herd moved as one. For a time, life was safe. For a time, Kalu lived as nature intended, but safety is fragile. One night, as the herd gathered near a watering hole, the sound of men broke the silence. Loud cracks filled the air. Poachers, Kalu, barely a year old, trembled as chaos erupted. His mother shielded him, trumpeting in panic, urging him to run. But elephants are giants of love, not speed. The men wanted ivory. And in minutes, Kalu's world was shattered. When the dust settled, Kalu's mother lay still, the herd scattered. And a tiny calf, wide-eyed and trembling, stood over her lifeless body. That night, Kalu became an orphan. That night, he entered a darkness most calves never survive. Days later, rangers patrolling the area found him, thin, weak, alone, his small frame pressed against his mother's remains. They named him Kalu, meaning survivor of the day. Carefully, they transported him to a sanctuary. There, humans became his new herd, but elephants remember. And Kalu's eyes carried grief far older than his age. In the sanctuary, Kalu began to heal. At first, he resisted food, pushing away milk bottles offered by caretakers. But slowly, a bond formed. One woman, Mariam, became his constant. She stayed by his side, slept near his pen, and sang softly at night. For Kalu, her presence echoed the warmth of a herd he had lost. Every morning, he would reach his trunk through the bars, touching her shoulder as if to say, "I remember." I trust again. Months turned into years. Kalu grew strong. His once fragile legs carried the weight of an elephant destined to lead. Among the other orphans, he rose naturally as a protector. When younger calves cried, he stood between them and danger. When food was scarce, he let others eat first. His memory of loss had shaped him into a leader who gave. And the sanctuary staff noticed Kalu was not simply surviving. He was teaching, but Kalu's story was not finished. His life, though safe in the sanctuary, carried a shadow elephants never forget. And as Kalu grew older, the weight of his past and the scars of his body began to surface again. What he did in his final days would leave the world breathless. Stay with me because Kalu's last walk is unlike anything you've ever heard. Kalu was no longer the fragile calf rescued from sorrow. Years passed, and the sanctuary became his kingdom. Within its wide grasslands and shaded trees, he grew into a towering giant yet gentle, always gentle. For the other elephants, Kalu was not simply a companion, he was a leader. When danger appeared, Kalu placed himself between the herd and the threat. When new orphans arrived shaking, confused, alone, he was the first to reach out, brushing his trunk against theirs in silent reassurance. Scientists tell us elephants can recognize distress in one another and respond with comfort, just as humans embrace those in pain. Kalu proved this truth every single day. One calf, only a few weeks old, refused to eat after losing her mother. She stood trembling in the corner of her pen. Caretakers tried everything, then Kalu approached. Slowly, he curled his trunk around her tiny frame, resting it gently across her back. Hours later, the calf began to feed. Not because of food, because of Kalu. Kalu also taught. Younger elephants followed him. He led them to water, teaching them where to dig when streams ran dry. He showed them how to strip bark, how to cool themselves with dust, how to listen for distant thunder that promised rain. Everything Kalu had once learned from his lost mother, he passed on, and isn't that what memory is for? To carry forward the lessons of those who came before us. Elephants never forget. And Kalu's memory of love and loss made him a living archive of survival. Caretakers at the sanctuary spoke often of Kalu's intelligence. He recognized faces, even years later. When Mariam, the woman who once sang him to sleep, left on leave for months, Kalu searched for her daily. When she finally returned, he ran to her with a trumpet so loud it shook the air. He wrapped his trunk around her gently, refusing to let go. For elephants, bonds do not fade with time. They are stitched into the fabric of memory. As Kalu matured, he became the heart of the herd. His presence calmed disputes. His decisions where to walk, when to rest, when to feed were trusted by all. Scientists describe such elephants as matriarchs, though in Kalu's case, he was a rare male who carried the same authority. It was as though his suffering had carved out wisdom that others instinctively followed. But even wisdom carries weight, and with every year, the invisible burden of his memories grew heavier. Rangers noticed moments when Kalu would stop at the edge of the sanctuary fence, staring far into the horizon. Was he remembering his mother? Was he recalling the night that shattered his world? Or was he listening to something we could not hear? Elephants live long lives, decades, sometimes 70 years. But they also carry their wounds for just as long. Old injuries from poaching nights, scars from bullets. Memories that resurface like ghosts, and Kalu, though strong, bore such scars. Subtle limps, tired eyes, pauses that grew longer with each passing year. Caretakers whispered to each other. Something in Kalu was changing. He was not the playful calf anymore, not the tireless leader. The great elephant who once stood like a pillar was slowing down. And yet, his story was not ending with weakness. No, Kalu was preparing for something greater. What Kalu did in those final days stunned everyone who witnessed it. A last act of dignity, a last walk that spoke louder than words. And when you hear it, you will understand why his memory must live forever. Time spares no one, not kings, not warriors, not even giants who once stood unshaken. For Kalu, the days of playful trumpets were fading. Something in him was changing, and those who knew him best felt it too. At first, the signs were small. Kalu lagged behind on long walks. He rested more often beneath the acacia trees. Caretakers noticed he ate slower, leaving piles of food unfinished. His once bold trumpets grew softer, more restrained, like echoes of a fading song. To the untrained eye, it was simply age. But to those who had lived with him for decades, it felt like something more. Kalu was preparing. Others believe they choose the moment of their departure. Was Kalu beginning such a journey? Even as his strength dimmed, Kalu remained a leader. Younger elephants still gathered around him, still waited for his cues. If he moved toward water, they followed. If he stopped, they stopped. His herd trusted him, even in weakness. It was a loyalty born from years of his protection, and a bond that only elephants understand deep, enduring, unbreakable. Caretakers described how, even on tired days, Kalu would extend his trunk to the calves, caressing their foreheads, guiding them gently away from danger. His body weakened, but his spirit never surrendered. His memory of loss had turned into a gift he gave to others: love, patience, and dignity. As the season shifted, so did the sanctuary. Storms rolled in more often, rain flooding the plains. Kalu, once playful in the rain, now stood still, letting the water wash over him in silence. It was as though he was listening, waiting for something. Caretakers reported moments when he would lift his head, eyes fixed on the horizon, trunk raised high, not in alarm, but in reverence. Almost as if he was saying goodbye, those who watched him began to whisper among themselves. The sanctuary staff, the rangers, even the other elephants seemed to sense it. The great leader's time was near. On the morning of his final walk, the sky was painted gold. The air was still, heavy with the weight of something unspoken. Kalu rose slowly, his massive frame trembling slightly, yet there was purpose in his steps. He moved past the trees, past the water, past the fences that had been his home for decades. Other elephants followed, their trumpets soft, subdued. It was not a call of play, it was a call of farewell. Kalu walked slowly, each step deliberate, as though every footfall was etching memory into the earth. His trunk swayed gently, brushing against the grass, against the younger calves who walked at his side. His eyes, once filled with the fire of survival, now carried a calm that words cannot capture. This was not fear. This was acceptance. Witnesses knew something extraordinary was happening. This was not an ordinary walk. This was not fatigue. Kalu was leading one last journey, a farewell march. And in his final act, he would leave behind a message so powerful, so unforgettable, that no human who saw it would ever forget. Kalu was ready for his last walk. The air was still, the sky bathed in gold. And Kalu towering, majestic, where he walked with a purpose no one could mistake. The herd followed, their steps slower than usual, as though they too knew this was no ordinary morning. The sanctuary staff watched in silence. Something sacred was unfolding before their eyes. Past the trees where he had once played as a calf, past the river where he had once taught others to drink, past the fences that had once defined his world. He moved further, into an open field glowing under the rising sun. Each step echoed with memory. Each step felt like a story being written into the earth itself, and then he stopped. The herd gathered close, pressing their trunks together, their rumbles vibrating through the ground like a shared prayer. Kalu lifted his trunk high toward the sky, a final gesture. Not of despair, not of fear, but of dignity. As though he was saying, "I remember, and now, I rest." He lowered himself onto the grass, folding his legs carefully, slowly. The herd circled around him, trunks brushing against his body, some pressing gently to his chest, refusing to let him go alone. Caretakers wept quietly. They had seen elephants pass before, but never like this. Kalu's eyes closed, his breath slowed, and with the first rays of sunlight breaking the horizon, the great survivor took his final breath. The herd trumpeted a sound, not of joy, but of mourning. They lingered around his still body, touching him, refusing to leave. Elephants grieve. They mourn their dead. They remember their fallen, and they carry the memory forever. That morning, every elephant, every caretaker, every soul who witnessed it knew Kalu had not simply died. He had left a message. Kalu's story is not just about loss. It is about resilience, about memory, about love that survives even the sharpest wounds. From the night he lost his mother, to the years he carried the herd, to the moment he chose his final walk, Kalu showed us something rare: that dignity is not in how long you live, but in how deeply you give. Elephants never forget, and through Kalu, we are reminded that neither should we. Forgetting their suffering means losing part of our humanity. Forgetting their role in our world means losing balance in nature itself. Every forest, every river, every savanna echoes with the footsteps of elephants. When they vanish, silence follows. Kalu's last walk was more than a farewell, it was a lesson. A reminder that life, no matter how heavy its losses, is meant to be shared, protected, and remembered. His body may rest in the earth, but his story must live in us. For in remembering Kalu, we remember what it means to care. To protect, to never forget. They said elephants never forget. And because of Kalu, neither will we. If Kalu's story touched your heart, share it. Let his memory travel further than his footsteps ever could. Subscribe to Triller Pictures for more stories that remind us of the fragile, beautiful ties between animals and us.